Okay, so valuation of bonds payable. For those of you who need to review bonds, in the section on Blackboard, I think I'd call it everything you ever wanted or never wanted to know about bonds. That takes you through everything I cover in AC 102. It's a good review of bonds. And then there's also something embedded within that that takes you through all of the computing of the present values of bonds. Definitely not on the test. Okay, so just if you need review. Okay, so valuation of bonds payable, what are we talking about? Basically, there's three things that can happen when a company issues bonds. They can issue a bond payable for $10,000 and get $10,000 cash issued at face value. They can issue the bond $10,000 and they can receive cash of $8,000. They're a little sad there. That's when the bonds are issued at a discount on bonds payable. They still have to pay back the 10, they only got the 8. The third thing that can happen is they can get more cash than they have to pay back. In this case, we say the bonds were issued at a premium. They have to pay back the 10, they got 12 to work with. When we talk about valuation of bonds payable, we're simply answering the question, what are the cash proceeds? How much do we get when we issue this bond? Are we going to get 8? We're going to get 12? We're going to get 10? Okay, so valuation, it's what are the proceeds of this bond issue. Okay, so how do we compute it? Well, of course, we use present value tables. So I'm looking at brief exercise 615. And this is where Clancy Inc. decides that they're going to issue $2 million in bonds, 7% bonds, that's the stated interest rate, due in 10 years, interest payable annually, and the market rate of interest is 8%. So when we are doing this, we ask the same questions, do we need to know the present or the future? But before we do that, we have to realize that we're discounting back to the present both the bond itself, which is going to be a single sum of the $2 million, and that's going to be due in, it's going to be the single sum of $2 million. And then we've also got to discount the interest payments. Okay? And so in order to do this, so when we say single sum or annuity, it's both. Okay, it's both because we've got the single sum, the bond, and then we've got a stream of regular interest payments. We have to compute the interest on this, so we would take the $2 million times 7%, and it's paid annually, so we don't have to divide it in two or anything. So we would get the interest payments of $140,000. That's just the $2 million times 7%. And then we would say, okay, so let's see, is it an annuity or an annuity due? It's going to be an ordinary annuity. Okay, so we just say it's an ordinary annuity because it's paid at the end of each year. I think it says that in the problem. And with bonds, that would generally be the case. Number of periods is going to be 10, okay, for the bond, and it's going to be 10 for the interest payments. It'll always be the same for both. And then the interest rate, and here is where you have to think a little bit. You use the market interest rate because that is going to be the interest rate that determines the proceeds you get, okay? So in this case, the interest rate is going to be 8% for both. Okay, so we're going to go to the present value factor of a single sum for our bond. We'll go to the present value factor for a, I forgot to even ask, we need to know the present in this. We'll go to the present value factor of an ordinary annuity for the interest payments. So let's see how this comes out. If we take the bond itself, we're getting the present value factor of a single sum for n equals 10 and the I equals 8%. That factor, I believe, comes out to 0.46319. We would go to the present value factor for an ordinary annuity of 8% for the interest payments, and that comes out to 6.71008. Okay, so what we would do is we would multiply the factor times the bond, okay, and so we would get 926,380. We would multiply the present value factor of the ordinary annuity by the amount of the interest payment here, and we would get 939,411. We would add those together. I am obviously out of board here, and we would get the proceeds of this bond issue would be 1,865,791. Okay, so that is the proceeds. So that answers the question, how much did we get when we issued this bond? And obviously, when you see that the interest rate on the bond, the stated interest rate that you're paying is 7, market rate for bonds of similar risk is 8, chances are you're going to be issuing your bonds at a discount, and that is the case. So our situation here would be, we would get the cash of 1,865,791. We would have our bond payable of the 2 million, and you would have the discount on bonds payable of 134,209. Okay, so that's basically what you have to remember is when you are computing the interest payments, you're using the stated interest rate. When you're computing the bond proceeds down here, you're going to be using the market rate. Now, if the interest were paid semi-annually, okay, when we got down to this part right here, if the interest were paid semi-annually, okay, so for semi-annual, like say it's paid June and December, if it's semi-annual, the N would equal 20 for both, okay, N would equal 20 for both, for both the bond and the interest payments, not just the interest payments, it would be for both, and the I, because there were 2 interest periods each year, would be 4%, okay, so it works, that's how that works there. So if you have 2 payment periods a year, you have to reflect that it's 10 years times 2 periods, and 2 periods a year, the interest rate is stated annually at 8%, so if there's 2 periods each year, the interest would be 4%. So that's your valuation of bonds payable.